morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to I'm Talking Waffles. I'm your host, Iliyana. So I just woke up from a nap, and so bear with me here. It's 6:31 p.m. when we're recording, but I spent all morning cooking everything because my boyfriend and I decided it'd be a great idea that we should just bulk cook, because it's just like we don't really want to cook like after work, and then you're like, oh, I'm super tired, and you don't want to cook, and we've been doing that, and it's just really exhausting to spend like the remaining hours that you have after work just to cook some stuff. So we decided today it would just make more sense if we just cooked everything for the week today and not have to worry about it until next week. So we made a chicken pot pie from scratch, blackened salmon with garlicky kale, so basically like kale chips around the salmon, baked salmon with honey mustard and pecan panko crust kind of on top of it, and roasted asparagus with almonds. I'm going to put all of the recipes that we cooked in our Instagram story, so stay tuned for that if you're interested in cooking that, and it's just going to be really exciting. But yeah, enough about me. I want to learn more about you guys. So I was looking at the analytics, and I noticed that I'm Talking Waffles has gone international, which is super cool. So it says that we have fans in the United States, in India, Ireland, and of course here in Canada where we reside. And so I would love if you guys could start engaging in the comments or just interacting on any of our social media platforms. Just let me know a little bit about you guys. I would really love to get to know you because you're getting to know me. So share something that you really care about. Maybe share something about an episode or how you found the podcast. So enough with me rambling about cooking and stuff. Today's episode, as you saw from the title, is kind of a spooky one. So without further ado, let's get into the scary story. So this was a warm summer day, probably like late July, early August. So this part of the town is my all-time favorite of the city that I live in. It's like a very small little area. It's very quaint. It has a bunch of different buildings. It has some really nice just artwork, and I wouldn't call it graffiti, but it has like very well done graffiti, and it's really close to like the Chinatowns and Little Italies of the city. Now this is the place where I do like 99% of my errands. So I get my hair done there, I get my favorite pizza there, which is like the stone oven kind of style, and they take the pizza and they put it in on like this big kind of like flat spoon thing, and they let it cook and they take it out, and it's super delicious. I love pizza from there. I miss being able to just walk across like a few blocks and go get my favorite pizza. Now that I've moved, I have to Uber Eats it, and it's very sad because I really miss just that nice little walk there and just getting that pizza. It's really good. And overall, that whole place also just kind of feels like a bunch of small businesses who are just awesome. Oh, I get my favorite gelato in that place as well. It's so well done and it's beautiful, and they have like snacks, and it's just my favorite place to be. So I remember that I was walking there just enjoying the weather, and I was on my way to do some errands. And so this was in the summertime, so even though COVID was around, we were in the second phase, I believe, so there were people walking around. I don't think we had to wear masks at this point either, so maybe it wasn't August, maybe it was a little bit earlier than then. But there were still a lot of people walking around, doing their business and doing other errands like I was as well. So keep in mind, this part is really important. About 3 sidewalk squares in front of me was this like younger dad and his 2 young daughters. So I'm walking there, and the kids are like laughing up ahead of me, and I'm listening to my music, and I see this car like pull forward in front of me, and it turns the turn signal on and kind of pulls across the street. And so I just assume it's like an Uber because it pulled right in front of a house. However, I didn't see anybody like in that house, but sometimes the Ubers come early, and then like a person will come downstairs and they'll go into the Uber. So I didn't really think anything of it at this point. So I just keep walking, and as I walk by the car, I kind of get like a bad feeling. And it's interesting how like your natural instincts just know something's not right, even though it doesn't really make sense why it wouldn't be right, because it just looked like an Uber was waiting for his passenger. And so as I walk by, keep in mind I have my music in my ear, so I can't exactly hear what this guy says, but he's like shouting something at me. And something that I wanted to make sure is I didn't want to turn and look at him because let's say, for instance, he had like a gun or something. He could have turned, and if I saw the gun, it kind of would have been just too late. I would be forced to either get into that car or he would try and shoot me, or he would actually just shoot me. So I made sure not to look at him. That way I wouldn't be forced to do stuff like that and just keep going ahead. It's kind of dangerous, I would say, as well. Like, if he did have a gun, he could have just shot me right then and there. But I think taking the power away from him by not looking at him if he had a gun was just it was a safer move on my part. So I was kind of weirded out because his voice was very aggressive. And he'd pulled over the corner, and so I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. That's kind of scary. So I continue to walk, and then I kind of wonder, oh man, like, was he trying to ask for directions? Like, was I being really rude? And then I'm like, okay, and I watch him. He drives ahead of me really, really fast, and he turns the turn signal on. So I assume, oh, okay, so he was going to ask for directions, and so he's going to go talk to that dad and the kids now for those directions. But no, that's not what happens. He pulls up, but makes sure that he ensures that he stays behind where the dad and kids are, but just ahead that I have to walk by him again. So I'm about, I would say about 4 sidewalk tiles away from him at this point, and I'm like sweating because now I know, 1, he's not an Uber, 2, he wants to talk to me, not the other guy. If you were to ask someone for directions, I would more likely then have obviously ask that dad over some random 20-year-old woman. So I immediately realized he does not want those directions. He doesn't want to be interacted with that dad. In fact, he was doing his best to ensure that he was blocking me from that dad and those kids, and I could watch them getting farther and farther away. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, okay, what the heck? My instincts were right. I'm really glad I didn't turn my head and see what he wanted, because he could have had nefarious purposes. And so now I'm trying to think how am I going to get around this? Now, I couldn't go across the street because it was really busy. There were cars everywhere. And in fact, these cars were actually kind of honking at that guy, and they kind of go around him, which was another weird thing. He just waited. He was waiting for me. So I was like, okay, I can't go across the street. And the thought didn't actually occur to me that I could just turn around and just go the other way. I wasn't really thinking very straight because I was panicking. I realize now that I probably should have just turned around, walked the opposite way, because he can't really just reverse in the traffic of the cars. So that would definitely be, if this ever happens to you, just go the other way. He can't find you that way. But that's not what I did. So what I did is I pretended to look down at my phone and walked by this guy, and I hoped maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe he doesn't actually want anything to do with me and I'm just being paranoid. So I hold my breath and I'm just walking by this car that has the turn signal on and is obviously just waiting for me to walk by again. And he says something again, and okay, I can't be 100% certain on what he said because I had my headphones in trying to focus on that and not the other guy. I was trying to stay calm because I was really scared. And I swear to you that this guy said, "Get in here now." And I'm panicking. I didn't look at him. I just kept walking, and I knew that I had to make sure that dad and those 2 daughters were still in sight, because they felt to me, they felt like the safety that I needed. If I could catch up to them, I would be safe. But if they turned the corner, it would just be me and this guy. So yeah, I was pretty scared. And so what I do is I noticed up ahead that the dad and the daughters had crossed the street, and so the street light numbers were counting down. And I'm like, okay, I have to time this perfectly and I can get away from this guy. So as I'm walking, I watch him again. He's trying to pull up, turn signal, waiting for me again. But this time what I do is I practically run across the street at this point, because originally I was going to turn down a different way, but he would have been able to turn as well and continue to follow me. So I kind of ran across this grassy part across the street where the lights were on. And then as soon as I got to the other side, the light had turned green. So the light had turned green. And so he was forced to kind of go forward with the flow of traffic because he no longer could pull into the side because he was at the intersection. And so I knew he was still there, and I could feel eyes watching me. And so I got to the closest place that I could. And the closest place I ended up into was a Rexall. So I walked into the Rexall and I'm just trying to understand what the heck just happened. And I'm walking up and down the aisles, and I had to buy shampoo that day anyway. So I'm going down the shampoo aisle, and I'm like, did that guy try and like kidnap me? Like, did he want to kidnap me? Like, what did he want with me? Like, I was really freaked out. So I'm like trying to calm myself, and I'm like, whew, that was like really scary. My hands were pretty shaky, but that was about the extent. Like, I was obviously scared, but I wasn't like, I guess I wasn't scared enough, because I wasn't sure if it was stuff I was making up or if it was like actually someone with nefarious purposes. But I knew that I was safe now, that I was in a different area, and that guy is no longer in the area that I was walking. So what I do is, obviously, I call my boyfriend and I let him know what happened, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna walk over there and we're gonna come get you. And I'm like, okay. And then after that, I called my sibling, and I was like, hey, so like this scary thing just happened to me. Like, what do you think about this? Because I was trying to figure out like what was happening. Like, what did that person want with me? Or maybe was I being weird? Like, was I just like imagining this is something worse than it was? And my sibling agreed that it was really, really freaky. They were saying that it could have been anything from like kidnapping or human trafficking, but it didn't sound good. And I agreed with that as well, because there are, well, as gross as, it's really horrible. There are a lot of human trafficking issues, especially like around in Canada. So that is really scary. And I actually can't walk down that pathway that incident occurred, because it like freaks me out too much. I don't know what that person wanted. I hope that person never got their nefarious ways with other like people. Yeah, and I still wish though, there were so many things that when I think back to the story, there's so many things that I could have done that I didn't, and I'm really lucky. But yeah, it's a really terrifying thing that happened to me, and now I'm sharing it with you. So with stories like this, I think it's important to also teach. They're teachable moments, and I think that it's important that you also should know how to like protect yourself and recognize like when something's not right. So I did a bit of research and stuff, and just based on my own knowledge and knowledge that's been passed on to me through friends or family. And I thought that I would share that with you as well, just in case like something like this ever happens to you or someone that you know. So just a disclaimer, of course, I've never been kidnapped. I don't know anybody who's been kidnapped. So I can't say 100% if these like strategies will 100% work, but it's just what I always keep in mind, and hopefully they help you or they help someone you know or someone you don't know. So one of the tips that I was told is if you're in an Uber or a taxi, you should always keep your window down, because that way you can yell out, or you can try and like jump out the window if something bad happens. Of course, I know like they can pull the window up from like their seat, but it's all about just trying to get out and like have someone hear you so they know. Another thing is that if you are like in a constant routine, you should probably try and change it up, because routines, people can memorize them, and so they'll know where you're going to go, what you're going to do. So it's better that you have like a varied routine throughout your week. That way you're like keeping yourself and others safe. So if you're walking home at nighttime all alone, a tip that I was always told is that try and change up your step, because if someone's trying to follow you, they're going to try to keep in step with you. So if you suddenly change it, you're going to hear them mess up, and you're going to know that they're intentionally following you. They're not just behind you, they're following you, trying to be silent. This one here, you may have been taught as a kid. If not, then I'm going to teach it to you today. So if you're going somewhere, make sure you let somebody know where you're going and when you're expected to be back. That way, if you don't show up when you're supposed to, or you're not home when you're supposed to be, they'll know that something's not right, and so that you can get the help quicker. This one here is one of my sisters, what she told me. When you're walking down the street, be it nighttime, be it in the morning, don't appear scared, because that's going to make you seem more like an easy target. If you like roll your shoulders back and walk with confidence, it's less likely that someone's going to want to target you, because it's going to look like you're going to put up more of a fight than someone who's more timid. Again, if you're walking home alone at night, always try to stay close to the streetlights, and do your best to stay away from like bushes and other dark spots, because people can hide behind those things and they can jump out and take you with them as well. So always stay close to the streetlights. This is one I've been doing since I was a kid, and it really does help you feel more comfortable, and people can see you. If the instance does happen and someone tries to grab you, make a scene, like put up a huge fight, let everybody know that something is happening to you. Neighbors should hear you, random people in the street should hear you. And in fact, like I mentioned earlier in one of these tips, if you put up a fight, sometimes whoever's trying to like do the nefarious things to you or like take you, they're just gonna see it as too much work. So they're not gonna want to put up this much of a fight. They usually want someone who's like timid and they'll kind of crumble, and it just makes their job easier. So you want to put up as much as a fight as possible, especially because if you leave like some DNA behind, FBI, those police people, they can help track down that person. So this one is something that my friend told me. However, I don't know if it's legal or not. I guess it depends where you live. Hold some kind of weapon on you. This could be a knife or like pepper spray or bear spray. My friend was telling me bear spray because that's not essentially illegal in some places. So you can get away with carrying bear spray. I don't know too much about that. Again, I don't know if it's legal, but carry something like that on you. So my friend is like 6 foot, who knows what, deep voice and like, well, I'm a big person. And he was saying that he was being followed one night when he was walking home alone, and he carries like a knife in his pocket. And what he did was he just kind of held the knife, kind of like turned it around behind him so the person following him can see it. And then he put it back in his pocket. And he said that gesture alone had that person like turning the other way and going elsewhere. Again, I don't know how legal that is, but it did work for him. And I mean, I don't know for sure if it worked for me. Like, I'm a very small, petite lady. So maybe me holding a knife isn't as threatening, but anything you can do to like protect yourself and show that you're going to put up a fight is really important. So yeah, those are some of the useful tips that I've been told on how to protect yourself. If you have any tips that you recommend, feel free to comment them on our Facebook, on our Instagram, tweet to us on Twitter, whatever you prefer, and just share your tips. Like, the more the merrier. It's really important that everyone knows how to protect themselves, especially because like scary things do happen. And so it's better that you know how you can protect yourself and save like your life. But yeah, so that was my story, and those are some of the tips that I would recommend that you use to protect yourself. Please share them around and let people know. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little bit different than some of the stuff we did earlier. It's a little more on the darker side. So don't worry, we're going to be having a mix of happy stuff as well. Next week, we're actually going to be talking with a special guest. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really, really exciting. We've been like talking over Messenger and we're planning stuff out. So we're really excited about that episode coming out. So of course, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. The fun fact of the day. So, the fun fact of today is, dun-dun-dun, the moon has moonquakes. Of course, they're less common and less intense than like the shakes that happened on Earth. Moonquakes are believed by the U.S. Geological Survey, also known as the USGS, scientists to occur due to like tidal stresses connected to the distance between the Earth and the moon. So, it's kind of cool. Our beautiful moon friend has earthquakes as well. So yeah, of course, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, tweet us, comment on stuff. It's always appreciated. I always love hearing from you guys. So with that, I'm wishing you a beautiful day, a beautiful night, a beautiful afternoon, a beautiful apocalypse. Who knows, you future folks? I have no idea what's going on over there. So yeah, I hope you had a lot of fun. I know that I did. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys next week, or you, of course, future folks, next episode. I should just start saying next episode. That way I can include everybody at the same time. But we'll see how that goes. So yeah, thanks so much for listening.